Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. You saw a clip at the top of the show for our first movie this week, which is Christopher Nolan's war epic, Dunkirk. And this is a film about English soldiers being evacuated from the beach of northern France after the catastrophic Battle of Dunkirk. And the film's getting a lot of acclaim, of course, for its technical prowess, which is something we've come to expect from Christopher Nolan. It's really a film where there is no stopping. It is relentless from the first moment to the very last moment of the film. It is nonstop action, and it takes place in 3 or 4 different segments. So it shows the rescue from the air, led by Tom Hardy. There is a rescue from a sea captain of his own yacht. And then there is the land beach part where there's a soldier who is trying to get off the beach. And then Kenneth Branagh comes in and he plays, sort of the captain or admiral, I'm not sure all the correct English terms, of the British Navy, who is kind of overseeing everything. So we have all these different perspectives. And what Nolan does very effectively here is he juggles all those pieces.
Yeah.
So it's very much a technical film, and it is quite amazing at times. For me, what the film lacked, was a character or one or two to really kind of empathize with or to feel something about. With the exception of the boat captain and his son, there aren't a lot of human moments in this movie.
Well, they have the main character, that's actually we see the very beginning where he's going through the town and he's trying to find some water, and then then he tries to sneak on the boat pretending to be a paramedic, which is
sort of like anything possible that could happen to that guy happens to that guy throughout the movie.
And it's funny that you talk about the only withdrawal, the only bad thing necessarily about the movie is there's someone to connect with. I didn't really mind that. I've been sitting here and struggling because Howard Hawks told Gene Siskel, a great movie is defined by having 3 great scenes and no bad ones. And there's not a bad scene in this film. There truly isn't. It is constantly, it's nonstop to the point where the Hans Zimmer score has an actual tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, no, I heard it.
Constantly just drives and drones at you. And
you didn't think the score was too much? I thought the score was too much. I thought
No.
the score was over the top. I felt like he could have let it breathe a little. I mean, I thought the score was different for Hans Zimmer, and I appreciated
This movie has no breaths. There's no
But you don't
time.
need the music to create anxiety every moment. The film's already anxious enough, and I felt like the score was over the top, like it overdid it. There were several times where I heard the score more than what I saw was going on in the screen.
I don't mind that, because when you're dealing with a war film, we should be put on edge. We should be, when you have those, those Saving Private Ryan moments, the bookend the film that are very tense. Then you have this nice hey in the middle. Not that it's totally nice, but it's a lot. It's kind of lets go. It takes its foot off the gas pedal. This one really doesn't. I was really impressed with that. There are a couple characters that I really did enjoy, though. Like I said, the first one that we see, we kind of see the different things that are going through with him. That he goes through. There's this great scene where they're in a boat that's on the shore, that they're waiting for the tide to come in and take them out. Then bullet holes start coming in, and then there's some paranoia, and they realize that someone hasn't spoken, and what does that mean? And that is a great scene. That's an absolutely fantastic scene. Then there's the other ones with the,
But did you feel like the stakes were high because you didn't really know who you didn't care about the characters?
No, the stakes were high because, I'm always one of those people that put yourself in that film and try to, what would you do in these situations? I cared about these guys because these are young kids, really, that are soldiers, and they're out there defending their country, and that's such a tough situation there. And then we see, when you start to realize that, these 3 things are happening at the same time, but where the timeline is kind of juggled because it's a Christopher Nolan film, it's done so well. There's a couple of times where you think that that's the airplane that you're seeing with this pilot in here, and this is what's happening here. Then you see from the other perspective, you're like, oh yeah, that's what's going on. No, it's the other one. And I enjoyed that. Then there's a particular wave from a airplane that means one thing the first time we see it, and the second time we see it, it's like, that's not what that is. I love that. It is a technical marvel. I did enjoy a lot of the characters. There's not a lot of dialogue, so even if there was a main person, which, I don't mind that so much. When they're soldiers, that's what they are. They're soldiers. Plus, they're English. They're all brunette, white. They all look the same to me. So,
well, that was but that was part of the main
that's
character
fine.
that you talked about. There was no distinction. I didn't find the actor that compelling to watch. The 2 most compelling actors in the movie to watch, Tom Hardy, whose face is covered the entire movie again, and Kenneth Branagh, who's of course a great actor but doesn't get a lot to do here, and then Mark Rylance, who plays I finally remembered his name, the captain of the yacht, who's more of a civilian, who's part of the civilian rescue, and his son really have sort of like the human moments in the film, but to me it just didn't feel like quite enough of that.
I'm impressed with Harry Styles. I was actually kind of impressed with him. He was pretty darn good, and I loved what his character's arc there, especially at the end when he was like, we failed. These people are going to throw stones at us. and it was a remarkable. That was a very
Well, it was a
very
catastrophic
emotional
battle,
moment.
that's for sure. It was definitely not. But, from a technical perspective and the sound design, I have to mention the sound design of this film because there were some scenes when they're on the beach and and you've seen that before. You've seen it in Saving Private Ryan and other movies, but I never felt it like I did in this movie where, the shells are hitting the beach and you feel like you're almost in the middle of it. I mean, the theater was vibrating. It was, the photography is great. And I liked elements of the score. It almost had like a horror element to it. It was very dissonant. I just thought it was too much and too loud, too often. Usual Hans Zimmer hitting you over the head character. But I could have just used one or two more characters. To me, it was what it brought it down from a 4-star film to a 3.5. Was just a few more human moments or some characters I could really care
the
about.
characters that you're forgetting about certainly are the Nazis, and they do a great job of not showing any.
Yeah, they're not even present.
But they're there. Oh no.
Well, they're there, but they're not.
And there are so
shown.
many times where you start to look over the shore when the point of view is from the water and you're looking at them on the shore. I'm looking at the horizon. I'm watching the horizon because I know they're right over on the other side. When are they going to come over? And they're all lined up and they're all standing there. Or when the planes start to come, I'm like, they're literally sitting ducks. And I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
You know that opening scene where he comes running through and he's shot at and it's the French and he's like, no, I'm English. It was just nonstop. It's a technical marvel. I was really, really impressed with that. But the storytelling, I enjoyed the timeline being jumbled around. Some people have been a little confused by it, which I didn't mind that at all because once I got the swing of it, it was
No,
like,
I figured it out. Even though at the beginning they do the thing where it's 1 hour, 1 month, 1 week, and at first I didn't understand what that meant. I eventually kind of figured it out, and I think there's a scene, Cillian Murphy, the Irish actor, he has a scene where he's on the boat, but then later on you realize he was, so you went back in time again.
And not realize, again, with Hollywood movies, you're so used to when a ship is going to go down, it goes like the Titanic, and you have all this time. No, that it falls over, and it's going to go. You're going to be pulled underneath it, and so that was terrifying. And then to be trapped under fire in the water and running out of air, and you have no choice. That's terrifying.
I would say this is a film that is about the right. It's an hour and 45 minutes, and he really couldn't, which is unusual because Nolan tends to like to make longer movies, but you couldn't.
No, movie like
no, it's so intense because, like I said, there are no breathable moments. I mean, unlike a lot of war movies, where you might have a nice piece of dialogue or some, there's very little dialogue. It's almost pretty much a silent film with a few exceptions. I mean, it's very minimal dialogue, very sparse. With the exception of a few those, it's pretty much non-stop action, and I don't mean action and like the action. I mean, it's really pretty anxiety provoking and intense. Several people I saw it with said their stomach hurt after the movie. So
okay, so we're going to move on to our next film. Actually, we have a clip for this one, so let's take a look at Maudie. Okay, so that clip you just saw is from Maudie. This stars Sally Hawkins as the title character, and she's a Nova Scotian woman who actually finds herself a bit homeless once her brother sells the family home, and she moves into a man as moves in with a man as his housekeeper, and bides her time by painting and becomes a bit of a focal point in the community. Angela really wanted to see this movie. It's a little tiny film, and in the summertime it always comes the independents, to battle the bigger blockbusters with these small little biopics, and this is a fine film. There's actually a little more depth to it than I kind of expected. I thought, I could watch the trailer and was like, it's a sweet 3-star film, but it's got Ethan Hawke in it. And if you've been watching the shows recently, I've never been a big Ethan Hawke fan, but recently he has been doing some work that's really been impressing me.
Yeah, he's been picking up
some really cool little parts and little films that I really enjoy, and so I was really actually looking forward to seeing this one. And I did enjoy this movie. It's hard not to like this movie. There are great performances in this film.
Yeah.
I do like her story. There was a little more to. There's always a little bit of a twist in terms of the past and some things that had happened. And I liked the film. The paintings were cute. It's an adorable film, and I liked it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to someone recently about why artist biopics and particularly painters tend to be better than other types of biopics, and it's obvious because film is a visual medium. Yeah. It's harder to make a movie about a musician or a poet, although Quiet Passion sure did a great job, but. But Sally Hawkins is a great actress, and she doesn't get a lot of, she tends to get, in American films especially, kind of, she played Cate Blanchett's sister in Blue Jasmine. She tends to play like the quirky side character most often, other than when she's in Mike Leigh movies, in which case she gets great, lead roles.
Quirky characters.
Bigger quirky characters. She tends to do quirk a lot, it's true. And I know she's coming up in another one soon, that underwater sea monster movie that's getting a lot of buzz, or
Guillermo del Toro's
what is it called?
new film.
I'm trying to remember the name name of it, but it's got an.
I thought this
hard
was
to
the one you were
remember now.
talking about, and I was like, yeah, twist my arm. I'm going. Of course I'm going.
No, I want to see that one too, but she's actually like the lead in that one. So
Yeah.
and Ethan Hawke, which I would not have expected them as a couple, but it works,
It
you know.
works.
And
they have nice chemistry.
Yeah, no, it was good. And she, you know, her paintings, she was a character that lived, you know, had a hard life. She has a disability and she struggles with that. And she, you know, finds herself in this unlikely romance with this really kind of rough outdoors guy who has a lack of manners. But it basically accepts her the way she is, which her own family and other people don't. And then her art becomes, you know, kind of a phenomenon. And as always happens, you know, read up a little bit on her, and her art, of course, after she passed, became much bigger, and now there's, you know, a museum, and their house is preserved as a museum in Nova Scotia, so you can
really?
go and actually see the full house, because she painted their little tiny 1-bedroom cottage. She painted every little surface of it, and so
Where they shared a bed.
yes, where they shared a bed before they were
Before
married.
they were married.
Yes,
Ooh.
except for one corner of the house. He told her she could do whatever she wanted. There was just the one corner where he took his work boots off, and he said, you can't paint this corner of the house, but everything else you can paint. And I liked that. I liked those little
Yes.
touches that kind of, you know, made the relationship feel real.
You know, in other roles, you know, with other different actors, you know, of course, I do want to give Sally Hawkins praise, but I really enjoy Ethan Hawke, what he's able to do. And this is not a glamorous role. This is not the role that a lot of people would want to go after. And if some people had done it, they may have played it bigger and gruffer. And I love Tom Hardy, don't get me wrong. But I could see where other actors would come in here and, you know, playing this
Play it
big,
really
overbearing character. Not a big, not big as in loud, but it's just as big as in like Brando-esque, where it's just kind of, you know, you're smoldering from within.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Whereas Ethan Hawke just kind of comes in as, you know, here's this guy, he's simple to the word, he says what he thinks, he does this and da-da-da, and just kind of does that. And he's not, you know, I really enjoyed that, and it's a beautiful looking film. It's a good looking film.
Yeah, it looks
And
great.
I do like the artwork, because, you know, you do mention, I just don't get a Pollock. I really don't. I really enjoyed the film, but when I look at his paintings, I still go, I don't get it.
You don't like Paul.
I just don't. No,
What
I
else
said
are-
don't like it. I don't get it. I'll
Okay.
flat out
Well,
say
abstract
I don't
art
understand
isn't
a
to
Pollock.
get necessarily.
You
It looks
spilled your
great.
paint,
It looks
buddy.
great.
You
looks
put that
good.
down while you were painting something, and that's what happened. I don't get it.
Okay.
So one of these days, someone will I'll get it. But you know, so this one is like, oh yeah, I did enjoy her paintings. I did like the whole story.
I like
did
folk
like
art.
it.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not the kind. It's not a great painter film like Mr. Turner or Frida, but I'm giving it 3 stars. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think.
Frida.
And I think it's got great little moments that I really appreciated. There's a scene where she's trying to convince him to do something, but she knows the right way to approach things with him. When he has a client that he didn't deliver because she knows he's just keeping track of things in his head
Yes.
because he can't write, right? But she works it around his pride, knowing he's a very proud man. She doesn't come out and actually say that to him. She makes him think it's his idea. And the way that scene just plays out and the way the movie lets those little moments breathe, to me, is what made
Isn't
it
that
really
what
good.
being in a relationship is all about?
Yes, manipulating the other person appropriately.
That's not
No, I'm just kidding.
manipulation.
I'm just kidding.
That's not what it is.
No, but she figuring out what makes that person tick, and
Yeah.
you know, working within the.
It's a very sweet. I did enjoy
I know
that.
it's a great, and a great little movie. And you know, you're right. It's great that Ethan Hawke, and you know, he's made this decision, that he had this moment where he decided, I'm only going to make movies I want to make. I want to work with good directors and do good stories, and I don't care about the box office Hollywood thing.
So I don't know how
It's
10
really
years
paying
from
off.
now they're going to get together and do the continuation of this story. How does that work again? No, that's
I don't
a bad
think so.
idea.
I
That
don't
sounds
think-
boring, doesn't it? Okay, so we'll move on. Speaking of folk art, we want to go and do a tribute to George A. Romero, who recently passed away. In fact, actually, several people had recently passed away, and we only have so much show. Of course, before we go into George A. Romero, though, I do want to mention Martin Landau, who had passed away, who had, you know, a very long career, starting with Hitchcock. It's very menacing. North by Northwest. Then, of course, had a great heyday in the late 80s and early 90s with
Woody
Ed
Allen.
Wood and Woody Allen pictures that were absolutely fantastic, and did some great work there as well. Sam Shepard passed away, who will always be Days of Heaven for me.
Oh, that would be. I was thinking Last Picture Show, but yeah.
Oh no, that one always just was he in Last Picture Show? I thought it was Days of Heaven was his debut.
You might
could
be
be wrong.
right. You might be right. Maybe he.
And then you mentioned that Jean Moreau had also passed away.
Yes, a
That's,
great actress who worked with Truffaut and
French
Melville
actress.
and all the great
Yeah.
French directors. So she was one of the biggest actresses of the French New Wave. And
So you know,
iconic.
if you pick from those people, you can have a wonderful memorial in terms of a film festival.
Oh yeah, watch Days of Heaven,
Days
Crimes
of Heaven,
and
definitely.
Misdemeanors.
Crimes and Misdemeanors, you bet. Yeah.
Jules and Jim.
Jules and Jim, yeah, that was
I mean,
really good.
that right
Well, I
there,
own all
3
of those.
films. Yes, there you go. Just hang out with Brian.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, so back to Romero.
Come on, everybody. So speaking of folk art, we got George A. Romero, who really revolutionized, the horror films. And whenever I think of horror films and early horror films, certainly there was ones that did have underlying stories when you think of something like Them or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it wasn't really until Night of the Living Dead. Now, of course, that's where zombies really kind of started, and they gave birth right then and there. But his zombie films have always had some other meaning, and I always thought that was great. When you were talking about horror films, people always said, they kind of threw those away. It's a weaker genre. Nope. There isn't, because a lot can be said through horror films, and he was the first one I always think of when I think of horror films. That was the first guy
social
that was really
commentary.
making social commentary by doing that, whether it was race, whether it was capitalism, whether it was Bush.
Military-industrial complex.
There are those as well.
He took on all them.
So, of course, the classic Night of the Living Dead, which I had recently watched again, but it was the version with Elvira making comments throughout it.
Not quite the same.
Well, that's fine. I mean, you'd seen it before. But it's such a stark-looking film, that black and white, that grainy look really, really pays
so influential.
off.
I mean, so many filmmakers
It
have
looks so good.
been influenced by Night of the Living
That
Dead.
opening cemetery scene is still very, very frightening. Though zombies have evolved certainly since then, but it's so creepy.
Yeah, they
especially
move
the
rather
slow
slow in
walking.
this film. Now we're
But
used
I
to.
don't mind that.
Yeah,
though.
no.
That's what's really, really freaky. And they're going out into the truck, and things kind of fall apart, and things catch on fire. Oh.
This is the one that started
frustrating.
off. If you're a fan
Yes.
of Walking Dead, or you think you're a fan of zombie films and you haven't seen Night of the Living Dead, then you need to see it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. The original, and it has been remade, and some of the remakes have been good, but right, haven't they? No, am I
No,
thinking
they were
of them?
color, and they were awful.
Yeah.
No. They had sequels, and especially, but he wasn't involved in the third one.
Yeah. Anyway,
Hilarious.
so my personal favorite, and Night of the Living Dead, of course, is what started out, but my personal favorite film of his is Dawn of the Dead from 1978. Which is where, it took the perfect, it's almost like a pre-80s critique. It's 78, but it's really, the idea of being stuck in the shopping mall, the ultimate symbol of American consumerism, particularly in 1978. It's, in a way, it's ahead of its time, because you didn't really start to see like shopping mall critiques really come into vogue until later in the 80s and into the 90s. And so this is the one that really did it all. And I remember seeing this when I was pretty young and just thinking, oh, it captured all my feelings, which to this day I still hate shopping malls. I really do. I hate shopping malls, and they still give me the creeps. And this movie captured all my feelings of alienation and everything that I feel about shopping.
Whether it was there was some remnants of their previous life that compelled them to go to the mall and walk around, or just because there's zombies in a mall. The next times after seeing that film, after going to the mall, it does change your perspective. And watching people kind of walking around a bit like a zombie. I do have this. One of the first DVDs I bought. You actually have to flip it. It's side A. And
you have a side A and side B
side
DVD.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Then
Those are almost vintage now.
They have from '82. He did Creepshow, which is a movie you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And actually, he wanted to do more stuff with Stephen King. Him and King actually got along really well. And Creepshow has its moments. There's some ups and some downs in that, but I do enjoy Creepshow.
It's not a perfect film, but it has some
good
amazing moments. And there's one with things in the ear and that.
Nope, I think of the beach.
No,
being
the
buried
ear.
up to your
It's the
head.
ear.
That's horror to me.
And my sister, so there's two. I had older teenage sisters that showed me horror movies when I was young, and the two that really gave me nightmares were Poltergeist and Creepshow. Creepshow is actually one of the ones that gave me really bad nightmares when I saw it when I was young, and particularly because of the ear.
Can hold my
and
breath
it
a
caused
long
it caused a lifelong fear of things in my ear.
Ugh.
So.
Then later in life, he came back to the Dead, did Land of the Dead, which was not one of my favorites, but Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, which I really think were underrated, especially Diary of the Dead, because that one's all caught on, it's kind of handheld, so it's crossed between Blair Witch and zombie movies, and it has some fantastic scares in there. And then of course I believe it's Survival of the Dead with a zombie on the horseback, which is terrifying, if I remember that correctly. And those were really good, and I was really sad that people did not get to see them, and they didn't get the push that they deserved.
I never saw either of those.
Yeah, once the zombie came back with Shaun of the Dead, and then the remake of Dawn of the Dead, then he made Land of the Dead, and that just didn't quite catch. But then his next two films were so good, and nobody saw them, and it was such a travesty, because those are really good zombie movies.
Oh, Survival of the Dead was one of the last ones he did then? Yeah. And that's, Diary is the one you would recommend if I was to see one.
I like both those, but yeah, Diary is really good. It had a lot of great scares on that one.
And I didn't see either of those. We didn't review them for the show either, weirdly.
No, we did not. they came and went really quick. But yeah, I'll forever appreciate his work because of zombies. But I will also never go into a shopping mall complex the same ever again. It's still disturbing and
yeah, empty. Oh yeah, no, terrible. Yeah, great filmmaker, great loss to the film community. And if you're a horror film fan or a zombie fan or just a film fan, you should definitely be checking out Romero's work if you haven't seen some of his best films. So. We will move on to our next segment, and that is Her Fresh Picks. This is where we pick a new movie that came out in 2017 that Brian and I missed when it came out to theaters, or maybe it never came out to theaters to begin with, at least here in Salem, Oregon, where we tape. And so we're reviewing it now in critically acclaimed films. And this week's pick is All This Panic, and this is a documentary that profiles a group of teenage girls in New York City over the course of 3 years as they come of age. And it's specifically basically from about the age of like 16 through the end of like what would normally be like freshman year in college. Mm-hmm. So a very interesting time frame with a lot of changes as they're getting ready to finish high school and kind of figure out what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. And it profiles quite a few number of girls. There's a whole slew of them, but the two that really stuck out as actual characters that you remember when the film is over is Lena, who starts off the film sort of as kind of an awkward, tomboyish girl, and she's got a lot of dysfunctional family issues going on with her parents, but she's really smart, and she ends up going to like a pretty prestigious college and finding more of herself there. And then Ginger, who's sort of the wild girl who decides not to go to college, unlike all of her friends, and do her own thing. And they, to me, sort of stood out as the two of the more memorable.
Be an actress?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
With the father who tells her, you need to become interesting. And she goes, well,
you want to be an actress, you need to at least work an hour a day doing something to be acting.
Yeah, and she gets mad about that. Yeah, she doesn't quite have herself figured out yet, but she was an interesting character. She's a pretty kind of angry person. She's actually best friends with the character of Lena, and they have a lot of tension in their friendship. They're the ones that have that really, bad fight on screen, and it's told very cinema verite. So there's no, explanatory anything. The filmmaker just follows them around. So it's about as interesting as a 17-year-old girl might be from time to time, which I'm sure Brian was not finding all the time interesting. First-time filmmaker. I think it's a good movie. I think it has some flaws. I think they picked too many people. There were at one point I think there was 10 different girls, and I was like,
one kind of came in at the beginning and then showed up at the end. I was like, oh, I forgot about her. What happened to her?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's almost like following like something like the 7-Up series or other great films that you really want to get to know the people, and it's only a little over. The film's not very long. It's only like an hour and 10 minutes, and so you don't have a lot of time. So maybe just paring it down to 2 or 3 because really that's all we ended up remembering anyway.
On the Angela scale, that's almost perfect length.
It actually felt a little short to me on one hand. On the other hand, because you didn't like it.
I didn't. No, I liked the movie. I did enjoy it. Teenage girls. I got 5 sisters. I've spent my time with teenage girls growing up. It was enough. But
this film was too
real. I actually enjoyed the one that was going to be an actress and her younger sister, and the way they barked and bickered at one another, and just stabbing each other with their words. And my sisters were very much like that at times. And actually, to me, that was kind of comforting. I was like, oh, they love each other. And they still had those conversations. They could say whatever they wanted, and the next day they were combing each other's hair or whatever. And so I
don't think they actually did that, but yeah.
But, well, something like that. But anyway, I did enjoy that. The thing that really amazes me, and I just had this conversation with my nephew who's the same age, is that this is the time in your life, when you're going after puberty and during puberty, it's just crazy. And then you're now supposed to go, finish high school, and then you go to college, and then what are you going to be for the rest of your life? No pressure.
Right.
And it always amazes me. I'm like, they're going to college. I'm like, just get your 2-year degree, knock that out. And when you know what you want to do, you've already got the tenure, then go back to school and finish that up, because not all of us knew what we wanted to do straight out of the chute.
Right, and that's why I thought the character of Ginger was a good one to have in there, because she's the one that decides to take a gap year or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe she never goes to college.
Maybe she doesn't.
But
Probably
she doesn't know what she wants to do.
But that's fine.
And she's kind of aware of that. The problem is she's not really doing anything, and that was part of the other thing. So.
Yeah, it was one too many characters, and I would like a little bit more time, because we are just kind of gleaming a little bit of certainly Lena's life that was fascinating. I was like, no, let's follow her family. I want to see what's going on in the family, because that was
she looked like she had an interesting family.
And she really, was anchoring herself, and it's really to be commended. I enjoyed this film very much. I liked it. Well, I liked it.
3 stars.
Sure.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely not one of the best of the year. A little disappointing because it's getting, but I can see why it's getting good reviews. I mean, but
It's being rated by overall good reviews. If everybody likes it, it's going to get highly acclaimed.
Okay.
Which is still fine.
So we'll wrap up. Dunkirk, what did you give it?
I'm giving it 4.
You're giving it 4.
You
Oh,
gotta
wow.
give it 4. I can't. You
Okay.
gotta give it 4.
I'm giving it 3.5.
Oh.
We talked about this already. We had a whole review. Maudie, we're both giving 3 stars, and we talked about George A. Romero and All This Panic. We both give 3 stars. So,
Yep.
okay. So, as always, you can check us out on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can listen to us on KMUZ or watch us on YouTube. And you can also watch us now on Corvallis Access Media, Channel 29, as well as Scan TV in Silverton. I'd like to thank our wonderful crew and our amazing sponsors. Have a great day and great movies.